Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're really getting into something heavy. We're looking at these philosophical, psychological sources that honestly challenge a lot of what we think we know about happiness, meaning, and, well, our need for control.
That's right. It's a deep dive into hope, pain, and how they connect, sometimes in really uncomfortable ways.
Exactly. And our mission, I guess, is to try and unpack the underlying mechanisms, what the sources call the laws of emotion, that seem to dictate so much of our behavior, even our societies.
Yeah, so if you've ever wondered why, we live in maybe the safest time in history, but there's still this constant hum of anxiety, this sort of dissatisfaction, well, this conversation is definitely for you.
We're going beyond the usual self-help stuff here.
Way beyond. We're looking at excerpts from this pretty dense text. It's basically a critique of modern life, especially our relentless focus on avoiding pain and just chasing pleasure.
And it digs into how meaning gets made, how hope is almost manufactured, often through conflict, it seems, and different kinds of faith.
It sounds complex, and it is, but we promise by the end of this, you'll hopefully understand that startling idea, why getting richer and safer seems to make some people feel more hopeless.
And we'll get into the two brains driving your consciousness, apparently. Yeah, the thinking brain and the feeling brain. Yeah. And critically, why trying too hard to be happy might actually be the thing stopping you from living a meaningful life. It's fundamentally self-defeating, according to these sources.
Okay, quite a promise. Let's unpack this. So, where do we start? The sources seem to kick off with this concept they actually label the uncomfortable truth. And it sounds, well, uncomfortable.
It's more than uncomfortable. It's designed to be existentially crushing, really.
Okay, so what is it? What's this truth we're supposedly running from?
It boils down to our cosmic insignificance, coupled with our mortality. The cold, hard reality is, one day, you will die. Everyone you care about will die.
And beyond us, a very small group of people for a pretty brief time, almost nothing you do, say, or achieve will ultimately matter in the grand scheme of things. The text literally calls us inconsequential cosmic dust.
Wow. Okay. That's a heavy starting point. I think most people maybe know that intellectually somewhere in the back of their minds.
Exactly. Intellectually, maybe, but we don't feel it constantly. And that's the first big insight from the sources.
So we avoid feeling it.
Completely. Everything we think, everything we do, our goals, our beliefs, our political fights, our life choices, it's all, according to this view, just an elaborate psychological defense, a way to avoid staring that truth straight in the face.
Because if we did...
If you woke up every morning truly feeling your utter insignificance, you probably couldn't get out of bed. There'd be no point.
So we have to invent a point. We have to project importance onto things, onto the world.
Yes. We give our job meaning, our family, our hobbies, even our struggles. We frame them with this sense of grand importance that ultimately, the source argues, is entirely fabricated by us.
It's like psychological engineering on a massive scale.
It really is. We project this imagined importance because we have this desperate, fundamental need to feel important. And that feeling, that sense of personal significance, that's the engine. That's what generates hope.
Ah, okay. So hope isn't just wishing.
No, it's deeper. It's the belief that what you're doing right now, in this moment, actually matters, that it's meaningful and it's leading towards some better future state. Without that feeling of importance, hope just collapses.
And if hope collapses,
then the uncomfortable truth rushes in to fill the void. And that's terrifying for us.
Which explains why our minds are constantly building these, what did the source call them? Hope narratives.
Exactly. These before-after stories. Yeah. We need them. Our psyche automatically frames our current pain or boredom or struggle as just the before picture, the necessary setup for the great after, the transformation, the success, the payoff.
You see that everywhere, don't you? If you lose your job, and instantly your brain goes, okay, this is tough, but it's pushing me towards something better, or a breakup becomes clearing the path for the right person.
It's automatic. These narratives give us our purpose. They define what's a worthy use of our limited time, as the text puts it. When someone says they're struggling to find meaning, they're really saying, I've lost the plot. I don't know what the after looks like anymore or how to get there.
And finding that story, that right path, is hard. Especially now, maybe. With so many options, career, family, travel, spirituality, politics. How do you know which narrative is the right one?
You can't know. Not for sure. That's the thing. There's this permanent state of unknowing baked into being human. We have to choose a path without certainty.
Okay, hold on. This permanent state of unknowing. It sounds like where traditional religion often steps in, right?
Precisely. And the sources highlight a really fascinating correlation here. It seems people who adhere to traditional faiths tend to suffer from depression and tragically commit suicide in far fewer numbers than non-religious people.
Wow. That's a powerful link. So are the sources saying that religions work because they basically acknowledge that unknowingness up front and demand faith despite it?
That seems to be the argument. They offer a pre-packaged hope narrative, a story. And it's often non-negotiable. The faith itself acts as a shield.
A shield against the uncomfortable truth.
Exactly. It provides a framework, a certainty of meaning that doesn't require you to constantly question or search for your own purpose day after day. The value, the meaning, it's already established by the system. Faith protects you.
This connects directly to that other big idea you mentioned, the paradox of progress. This feeling that even though things are getting better, we're feeling worse.
Yes. It flies in the face of common sense, doesn't it? Objectively, look around, especially in developed nations. We are the safest, richest, best-fed, most comfortable humans probably ever. Yet, collectively, we seem more hopeless, more anxious than ever before. That's the paradox. The better things get externally, the more we seem to despair internally.
And there's data for this.
Oh, yeah. Overwhelming data. We mentioned the stats in the U.S. Symptoms of depression and anxiety among young people have been rising steadily for like 80 years. 80 years.
That's staggering.
And the most shocking fact, the one that really makes you stop and think, the wealthier and safer a place is, the more likely people are to commit suicide.
Wait, really? More wealth, more safety, leads to more suicide. How does that work?
It's the smoking gun, isn't it? It strongly suggests that removing external threats, physical danger, hunger, poverty, doesn't automatically lead to better psychological health. For many, it seems the opposite happens.
So when you don't have to worry about famine or war.
The purpose those struggles provided also disappears. Think about it historically. Your purpose might have been simply surviving the winter or protecting your village or feeding your family. Those were undeniable life or death challenges. They gave life meaning, however harsh.
And now that those are, well, mostly solved for large parts of the world,
we're left with an existential vacuum. The external tension, the obvious struggle, is gone. But the human need for meaning, for significance, that's still there. It hasn't changed.
So the argument is that the internal challenge facing our own insignificance, the uncomfortable truth, is actually much harder on our psyche than the old external challenges were.
That seems to be the implication. When life was short and tough, spiritual religions offered hope in the afterlife. Now life is longer, more comfortable, but we're left kind of adrift, confronting the lack of inherent meaning without that built-in religious narrative to lean on.
It's almost like safety and comfort remove the friction needed to feel heroic.
Right.
Or even just useful.
That's a great way to put it. If everything's easy, do our efforts even matter? If meaning comes from overcoming worthy obstacles and prosperity removes most of those obvious obstacles, yeah, we might be in trouble psychologically.
So we invent new obstacles. We focus on tiny flaws, social media drama, optimizing every little thing.
We have to. We manufacture internal struggles because the feeling of struggle itself might be necessary to validate our existence. That's the paradox in action.
Okay, that idea of internal struggle, manufactured or not, brings us neatly to this modern obsession with self-control. The sources call our usual way of thinking about it the classic assumption. What's that?
The classic assumption is basically the foundation of the entire self-help world. It's the belief that when people fail, they can't lose weight, quit smoking, overcome addiction, shake off depression, it's simply because they lack willpower.
It's a failure of self-control. A moral failing, almost.
Pretty much. It don't seem that changing ourselves is as simple as just deciding to do it. Just make better choices. Apply more effort. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps.
And we really cling to that belief, don't we? Even when we see people, or ourselves, fail repeatedly.
We cling to it desperately. Because the feeling of being in complete control of our own destiny, our own actions, that feeling is a massive source of hope. If failure is just about weak willpower, then success is always just one determined decision away, right? Hope springs eternal.
I see the trap. So the self-help industry kind of feeds off this.
Absolutely. It reinforces the idea that you are inadequate But don't worry, this next book, this next program, this technique will finally give you the self-control you lack. It creates this cycle.
What cycle?
The cycle of trying, failing, feeling bad about your lack of willpower, then renewing your hope with a new method and trying again. It's almost like an addiction itself, an addiction to the hope of finally achieving perfect self-mastery.
So the sources are saying the problem isn't usually a lack of willpower. It's that we misunderstand what's actually driving our behavior.
Exactly. We misunderstand the structure of our own consciousness, and the analogy the sources use, which I think is brilliant, is the consciousness car.
Okay, tell me about the consciousness car.
Right. So picture your consciousness, your mind, as a car. Inside, there are two travelers. There's the thinking brain, and there's the feeling brain.
Okay, thinking brain. That's the part we usually think of as me, right? Logic, reason, language, planning.
That's the one. It's the passenger with the maps, doing the calculations, understanding cause and effect. It handles the lateral connections, how things are related in the world. If I do X, then Y will happen.
Got it. So who's driving?
The feeling brain. That's the driver. This is where emotions live, impulses, intuition, gut feelings, deep-seated instincts. The feeling brain isn't interested in maps and logic in the same way.
What's it interested in?
It decides what's good or bad, desirable or undesirable, better or worse, morally superior or inferior. It makes hierarchical connections, and crucially, it decides what we feel we deserve.
Wow, okay, so thinking brain says how things are, feeling brain says how things ought to be.
You nailed it. And that's why the illusion of self-control breaks down. We spend all our energy trying to reason with the passenger, the thinking brain. Come on, we should eat the salad, it's healthier.
Oh, yeah.
But the driver, the feeling brain, already decided 5 minutes ago that it feels stressed and deserves the comfort of the pizza. And the driver has the wheel.
So the thinking brain is just along for the ride? Or does it do anything?
Oh, it does something very important. It justifies the driver's choices after the fact. This is the danger of the self-serving bias. Meaning the thinking brain often acts like the feeling brain's very smart, very expensive lawyer. Its main job isn't finding objective truth. It's constructing rational arguments for why the feeling brain's impulsive decisions were actually the right ones all along.
I needed that pizza because I had a hard day and self-care is important.
Exactly. The rational mind draws the map. The emotional mind already decided it wants to follow. This is how prejudice starts, how self-centeredness gets reinforced, how we stick to beliefs even when evidence contradicts them. We rationalize what feels right.
And this isn't just philosophy, right? There's neuroscience behind this. You mentioned Damasio.
Right. Antonio Damasio's work with patients who had damage to the emotional centers of their brain was groundbreaking. They couldn't make decisions, even simple ones. They could logically list pros and cons forever, but without the emotional gut feeling to assign value, they were paralyzed.
So you need the feeling brain to even be rational.
You need it to assign value, to weigh options based on past emotional experiences. The feeling brain develops its own kind of knowledge, a value-laden knowledge based on what's happened to us.
And here's where it gets potentially tragic, right? What if those past experiences were negative, like trauma or abuse?
That's the core psychological problem the sources identify. If someone experiences terrible things, especially early in life, their feeling brain can learn on a deep, nonverbal level that they deserved that suffering. It internalizes a feeling of unworthiness.
Oh no. So even if their thinking brain knows logically, I deserve better, the feeling brain, the driver, might still steer them towards situations or relationships that repeat the pattern, because deep down it feels that pain's what it knows or even deserves.
That is the fundamental problem of self-control, as presented here. It's not about lacking willpower or intellect. The thinking brain often knows better. The root issue is a feeling brain that's been conditioned with flawed, self-defeating values about its own worth.
So changing yourself isn't about forcing yourself with willpower.
It's about somehow re-educating the feeling brain, changing its underlying value hierarchy, which is incredibly difficult.
Yeah, let's make this concrete. The anecdote about the friend who volunteered abroad.
Great.
How does that show the value shift?
Okay, yeah. So initially, her life revolved around immediate gratification. Her value hierarchy, based on her actions, was something like, number 1, parties, especially with great DJs. Number 2, access to good drugs. Number 3, work to pay for 1 and 2. And way down the list, maybe, sleep.
Right. And her behavior followed that perfectly. Constant stimulation seeking.
Exactly. She didn't lack control. Her system was working perfectly according to those values. She was controlled by those values.
But then she had this intense experience volunteering, seeing real suffering, helping children.
Right. A powerful, emotionally resonant experience that hit the feeling brain directly. And afterwards, her internal hierarchy completely flipped.
What did it become?
Something like, number 1 is saving children from needless suffering. Number 2, work. Now maybe seen as enabling #1 or just necessary. Number 3, sleep. Need for energy for 1 and 2. And parties. Way, way down. Maybe off the list entirely for a while.
The key point wasn't just the change, but how it felt afterwards.
Yes. When she came back, she didn't feel deprived because she wasn't partying constantly. It wasn't a struggle of willpower against temptation. The parties just stopped being fun.
Because the value changed.
Precisely. They lost their emotional currency for her. Once the feeling brain stopped valuing that kind of stimulation so highly, it stopped generating the dopamine hit, the feeling of fun. And you don't really mourn losing things you no longer value. You might even feel a bit embarrassed you valued them so much before.
That feeling of looking back and thinking, what was I doing? That's actually a sign of growth.
If you integrate it properly, yes. It signals that your underlying values have shifted, hopefully towards something more mature, more meaningful, maybe more resilient.
Okay, this is fascinating. If emotions and values drive us like this, is there a way to model it? The sources mention these fictional Newton's laws of emotion. Sounds intriguing.
It's a clever framework, using Newton as a metaphor for how the feeling brain tries to keep things, well, balanced, especially in social interactions. Law number 1 is about the moral gap.
Moral gap.
Yeah. When someone causes you pain, could be physical, could be emotional, an insult, a betrayal, a kind of moral imbalance is created, a gap opens up. And the feeling brain immediately summons what the text calls icky emotions.
Like resentment, anger, jealousy.
Exactly. Those feelings are signals. They motivate you, compel you to do something to equalize the situation, to close that moral gap.
And closing the gap restores hope. How?
Because it reaffirms that the world, or at least your world, operates on some kind of understandable, maybe even fair principles. If you get hurt and nothing happens, the gap stays open. It feels unfair, maybe you feel worthless, like you deserved it. Hope diminishes.
So how do we equalize?
Lots of ways. An apology can do it. The other person acknowledges the imbalance. Demanding compensation can do it. Primitive tit for tat, like punching someone back, obviously does it crudely. Even something small, like if someone ignores your text.
You feel slighted. That's the moral gap.
Right. And maybe you equalize by ignoring their next text. It feels petty, but on some level, the feeling brain registers, okay, balance restored, things are fair again. Hope in the relationship, or just in social fairness, is maintained.
Okay, that makes a weird kind of sense. What about the second law?
The second law ties it all together. Our self-worth equals the sum of our emotions over time.
Whoa. Explain that one.
It helps explain things like narcissism, both high and low self-esteem versions. The source argues they're two sides of the same coin.
How so?
Both the person who thinks I'm amazing, everyone loves me, and the person who thinks I'm terrible, everyone hates me, are operating from the same premise, that the self is something incredibly special and separate from the world.
And the world should constantly reflect that specialness back to them.
Exactly. Either through admiration, high self-worth, or through perceived persecution or neglect, low self-worth. They need constant external validation, positive or negative, because their self-worth is built entirely on this fluctuating sum of emotional feedback.
So they swing wildly, from feeling like a god to feeling like dirt.
All the time. Every interaction is either proof of their amazingness or proof of their victimhood. There's no middle ground, no nuance, no just being ordinary.
Because being ordinary means giving up that feeling of being special.
Yes. And that specialness, even if it manifests as victimhood, is core to their identity. The oscillation is the direct result of their self-worth being this fragile thing, totally dependent on the emotional weather, the sum of recent feelings.
Which implies that real psychological growth probably involves confronting pain, experiences that challenge that fragile self-image.
It has to. Only experiences that contradict the established values, that create dissonance, can force the feeling brain to potentially restructure itself. Pain, in this model, isn't just bad, it's often necessary for growth.
Okay, so if our whole lives are this constant striving, driven by the feeling brain's values and this need for hope, we need to talk more about hope itself. Yeah. The sources argue that even secular people operate on faith. How does that work?
It's a really key point. We tend to think of faith as purely religious, right? Belief in God, the afterlife, etc. But the argument here is that all hope fundamentally rests on faith.
Even for an atheist?
Absolutely. Think about your daily life. You have faith that the money in your bank account actually has value. It's just numbers on a screen or pieces of paper. Its value is a shared belief, a collective faith in the economic system.
Okay. I see that. What else?
You have faith that getting an education is important, that it will lead to a better future. You can't prove that beyond all doubt for every single person, but you operate on that faith. You might have faith in the institution of marriage, or in democracy, or in scientific progress.
So any belief that something is important, valuable, and will lead to a better outcome, even if we can't empirically verify it right now, that's faith.
That's the argument. All hope is based on a faith that something matters, despite the uncomfortable truth and the inherent uncertainty of life. And every coherent belief system, religious or not, starts with what the source calls a God value.
A God value, like the top value.
Exactly. It's the core, non-negotiable, faith-based belief at the very pinnacle of your value hierarchy. It's the conviction that this one thing, whether it's God's love or economic growth or social justice or national greatness, is the ultimate good. The thing that, if prioritized, will produce the best possible future and therefore the most hope.
And once you have that God value,
then the thinking brain's job, remembered the lawyer,
Yep.
is to organize everything else underneath it, to interpret all evidence, all experiences in a way that supports and serves that primary faith.
That makes sense. Okay, the text then breaks down different types of these belief systems, these religions, based on how resilient they are, like difficulty levels in a game.
Yeah, it's a fascinating taxonomy.
Yeah.
First up, spiritual religions, rated hard difficulty.
Why hard?
Because they focus on the next life, on supernatural promises. Think of the classic Judeo-Christian ethic, charity, compassion, salvation after death. These systems were incredibly resilient for millennia, especially when life on Earth was, frankly, awful for most people. Short, brutal, unpredictable.
So they offered hope beyond this life.
Precisely. And their great strength, their resilience, comes from being essentially evidence-proof regarding their core claims.
How so?
Well, how can worldly events disprove the existence of God or the promise of heaven? A famine doesn't disprove God. A war doesn't disprove salvation. The God value exists in a realm beyond empirical verification. So no matter how bad things get here, the hope remains intact. It's incredibly stable. Hard to shake.
Okay, hard difficulty. What's next?
Next are ideological religions, rated normal difficulty. These are systems focused on achieving certain outcomes in this life, usually if adopted by a large group or whole society.
Like what? Politics? Economics?
Exactly. Capitalism, communism, socialism, nationalism, feminism, environmentalism, any large-scale ideology that promises a better future here on Earth if its principles are followed. They still require faith, collective belief, but they are, at least theoretically, verifiable to some degree.
You can see if capitalism is delivering wealth or if a revolution achieves its stated goals.
Right. And that's where the danger comes in, according to the sources, echoing Nietzsche's concerns. When you replace an infallible, supernatural God value with a fallible, worldly ideology, what happens when the ideology fails?
People lose faith or get angry.
Or both. When the promised utopia doesn't arrive, when the economic system creates massive inequality, when the nationalist dream leads to disaster, the faith is shaken. And because the God value is supposed to be perfect, the failure can't be the ideology's fault.
So they need someone else to blame, an enemy.
Bingo! Adherents have to double down. They need an external enemy, scapegoats, traitors, wreckers, someone to blame for why the perfect system isn't working. This is why ideological conflicts become so vicious. The stakes are ultimate, but the foundations are shaky. Much of modern political polarization fits this model perfectly. Competing, fallible God values battling it out.
Okay, that's normal difficulty. What's easy mode?
Interpersonal religions. This is where you essentially surrender your self-worth, your core meaning, to another individual.
Like intense romantic obsession or worshiping a celebrity.
Yes. Naive adolescent love is a classic example. Or the intense devotion some fans have for sports stars, musicians, or political figures. You derive your sense of purpose and value from alignment with, and the perceived approval of, this one person.
Why is that easy mode?
Because it requires very little abstract thought or long-term commitment to principles. Your main job is just devotion, worship almost. But it's also incredibly fragile.
These people are flawed.
Because people are people. If your God value is embodied in one person and that person screws up, disappoints you, or just turns out to be human, your whole meaning system can collapse overnight. It's low investment, high risk.
This also explains political devotion, doesn't it? Treating a leader like a savior.
Absolutely. And it highlights how much of our social reality is built on shared faith. Think about political boundaries. Lines on a map, they're completely made up, right? They only exist because we collectively agree they do, because we have faith in the idea of the nation or the state.
Or the rules of a game, like football. Just lines on grass.
Exactly. They have power because of shared belief. Same with political authority. Whether it's a king or a president, their power rests ultimately on the population's faith in their legitimacy, in the system they represent. These figures become living embodiments of the group's values, deities for the easy mode adherents.
But the sources mentioned one belief system that operates differently. Science, calling it an evolving religion.
Yeah, this is a crucial distinction. Science is presented as unique because its God value, if you will, isn't a fixed doctrine or person, it's evidence itself, or rather the process of testing beliefs against evidence.
So it's designed to change.
Precisely. Unlike traditional religions or rigid ideologies, science is built on the expectation of being wrong. It progresses by constantly questioning, testing, and overturning old ideas when new evidence emerges. It's not tied to one sacred book or unchanging truth. It's designed to self-correct and improve.
And this had a huge impact beyond just technology.
Massive psychological impact. The scientific revolution and the Enlightenment that followed introduced a radical new concept into human consciousness. The idea of growth, progress.
Before that, people just expected life to be the same.
Pretty much. For most of history, you expected your life to be roughly similar to your parents and grandparents. Maybe a bit better, maybe worse due to war or famine. But the fundamental conditions weren't expected to transform radically. Hope was often directed towards the afterlife because this life felt largely fixed.
But science changed that. It showed we could actually improve things here and now.
Yes. Technology, medicine, eventually economic growth. Science demonstrated that tangible improvement in this life was possible. This created a huge shift. People started investing their hope in worldly progress, in ideologies that promised to deliver that growth rather than solely in spiritual salvation. It's a major reason for the decline of traditional religion's dominance in many places. Hope moved from the next world to this one.
Okay, so we have these competing systems, spiritual, ideological, interpersonal, even science, all vying to provide hope. How are new ones created? Or how do existing ones maintain themselves? The sources give steps.
Yeah, it's kind of a cynical instruction manual, but probably quite accurate. Step 1, sell hope to the hopeless.
Target people who are lost.
Exactly. Find individuals whose current values have failed them. People feeling adrift, alienated, angry, lacking purpose. They are psychologically primed for a new narrative, a new God value that explains their suffering and offers a path forward.
The text mentioned the LaRouche youth movement as an example.
Right. Often, quite extreme or complex ideologies appeal most strongly to the hopeless. They offer seemingly profound explanations for why the world is messed up and why they feel left out. It validates their feelings, and crucially, it offers them
a cause, a community.
Both. A sense of being part of something bigger, a grand struggle against evil or ignorance, and a community of fellow believers where they finally fit in, where their new identity is reinforced. Hope requires feeling you're on the right team, fighting the good fight.
Okay, so you find the hopeless. Step 2 is choose your faith. Establish the God value.
Yes, define the core belief. The thing that, if followed, guarantees the best future. Could be anything, the free market, the revolution, ethnic purity, divine law, whatever.
And step 3 sounds crucial. Preemptively invalidate all criticism.
This is the immune system of the belief structure. You have to build defenses around the God value because remember, it's ultimately based on faith, not absolute proof. So you create a rigid us versus them dynamic.
How did that work?
Anyone who questions the God value or points out flaws in the ideology is immediately labeled as them. They're not just wrong, they're bad, they're deceived or malicious or stupid or morally corrupt.
Like, if you criticize the war, you must hate our troops. Or, if you question this movement's tactics, you're secretly one of the oppressors.
Exactly. It shifts the focus away from the substance of the criticism onto the motives or character of the critic. The message becomes, good people like us believe this. Only bad people like them would disagree.
And conspiracy theories fit in here perfectly.
They're the ultimate tool for this. They don't just say critics are wrong. They say critics are part of a vast, secret, evil conspiracy to destroy the truth, the faithful nation. It makes the believers feel even more special and validated in their struggle against this hidden enemy, and it completely insulates the core beliefs from rational challenge. Anyone questioning is automatically part of the conspiracy.
Okay, us versus them, invalidate critics. What's the last step? Rituals.
Step 4, rituals. These are specific, often unique, repeatable actions that reinforce the feeling brain's connection to the group and its values.
Not necessarily big religious ceremonies.
Could be, but doesn't have to be. It could be wearing certain clothes, using specific jargon or greetings, singing particular songs, attending regular meetings, saluting a flag, even shared dietary habits. In a marriage, it could be the specific way you always say goodnight or your shared Sunday morning routine.
Why are these so important?
Because they're not about logic. They're about embodied emotion and identity. Rituals bypass the thinking brain. They connect adherents physically and emotionally to the group's past, affirm their belonging in the present, and reinforce the value hierarchy non-verbally. They make the faith feel real and tangible.
So this whole system, finding the hopeless, giving them a God value, defending it fiercely, and reinforcing it with rituals, it's all designed to generate and maintain hope. But it seems like conflict is baked right in.
That's the really unsettling conclusion from the sources. Conflict isn't an unfortunate byproduct of competing belief systems. Conflict is the engine.
Hope needs conflict.
It seems so. Groups need an other, an enemy, a struggle to feel significant, to prove their values are the right ones. The source flips it around. Maybe it's not that hope arises because the world is messed up. Maybe hope requires the world to be messed up, requires problems to solve and enemies to fight so that we have a purpose, a reason to feel important.
Wow. So the very thing that gives us hope and unites groups
is the same force that fuels division, hatred, and destruction between them. It's a deeply uncomfortable paradox.
All right, if hope is so tied up with faith, conflict, and these possibly fragile belief systems, then maybe the whole modern goal of just pursuing happiness, trying to eliminate all pain, is misguided.
That's exactly where the sources land. The pursuit of happiness, as typically conceived, is presented as fundamentally self-defeating, and maybe even impossible. We need to talk about pain as a universal constant.
Pain is unavoidable.
Completely. The analogy used is whack-a-mole. You solve one problem, one source of pain, say you finally pay off your debts, whack, down it goes. But immediately, another one pops up, maybe a relationship issue or health scare or work stress.
You never get rid of all the moles.
Never. The pain just changes form. It shifts focus. Because, the argument goes, the human condition itself is inherently defined by some level of struggle, tension, or dissatisfaction. Pain is part of the package of being conscious.
This sounds like the hedonic treadmill idea.
Very much so. Decades of research support this. We seem to have a happiness set point, maybe around a level 7 out of 10. Mildly pleasant, but not ecstatic, never fully satisfied.
So even huge positive events don't change that baseline long term. Winning the lottery, finding true love.
They cause temporary spikes, sure, you hit a 10. Or negative events cause dips, down to a 0 or 1. But remarkably quickly, often within months, people tend to drift back to their baseline 7. We adapt.
Our expectations just reset.
Exactly. The new car becomes just the car. The exciting relationship becomes the normal relationship. We're built to adapt and then start seeking the next thing, the next improvement. That baseline dissatisfaction keeps us striving.
And there's another effect related to this, the blue dot effect. Explain that one, because it sounds really relevant to today.
Okay, the blue dot study is fascinating. Researchers showed people screens with lots of blue dots and a few purple dots and asked them to identify the purple ones, the threats or problems.
Simple enough.
But then, without telling the participants, the researchers started gradually reducing the number of actual purple dots shown. Objectively, the problem was becoming rarer.
People should have reported fewer purple dots, right?
You'd think so, but they didn't. As the real purple dots became scarce, people started expanding their definition of purple. They began identifying dots that were slightly darker blue, dots they would have ignored before as purple infractions.
No way. So as things got objectively better, people started perceiving more problems.
Precisely. Their threshold for what counted as a problem lowered to maintain a relatively constant rate of problem detection. This is called prevalence-induced concept change.
And the implication for society is huge.
Huge. It's the psychological engine driving the paradox of progress. As society solves big problems, reduces violence, increases safety, tackles major diseases, we don't necessarily feel more satisfied. Instead, we lower our threshold. We start defining minor inconveniences, awkward social interactions, or differing opinions as major problems or threats.
We find new purple dots everywhere.
Because our minds seem geared to find a certain level of threat or dissatisfaction in our environment. If real threats diminish, we subconsciously redefine lesser things as threats to fill that quota. We are, in a sense, programmed to find problems.
Okay, if pain is constant, and we even invent problems when real ones fade, then trying to make happiness, meaning the absence of pain, the ultimate goal in life.
It's a toxic value, according to these sources. It sets you up for failure and perpetual dissatisfaction.
How did we even get here? Didn't ancient philosophers have a different focus?
They absolutely did. Think Plato, Aristotle, the Stoics like Marcus Aurelius or Seneca. Their focus wasn't on maximizing pleasure or minimizing pain. It was on character, on virtue, on cultivating the inner resilience to endure pain gracefully and act ethically regardless of circumstances.
Virtue was about how you handled suffering, not how you avoided it.
Largely, yes. But then came the Enlightenment. With the rise of science and the idea of progress, thinkers started suggesting that maybe we could engineer a world with much less suffering. And the pursuit of happiness, often defined as maximizing pleasure and minimizing pain, became seen as a legitimate, even the primary, human goal.
But the source says this is self-defeating. Why?
Because genuine meaning and satisfaction, paradoxically, often come from choosing to endure pain for something worthwhile. Raising children is often painful and exhausting, but deeply meaningful. Mastering a craft involves endless frustration and sacrifice, but yields profound satisfaction. Building a strong community requires dealing with difficult people and compromising, but creates belonging.
So living well isn't about avoiding suffering.
It's about choosing to suffer for the right reasons, for values that are more important than your own immediate comfort. Chasing comfort above all else leads to, well, nihilism, maybe addiction, certainly a kind of perpetual adolescence, sacrificing meaning for feeling good.
Okay, this brings us to maturity. How do the sources define maturity? It's about developing different kinds of values.
Yes, it's framed as a progression through 3 stages of moral development based on the type of values that drive behavior. And the unsettling part is, most people apparently get stuck before the final stage.
What are the stages?
Stage 1 is childhood. Pleasure pain driven. The world revolves around immediate wants and needs. I want the cookie now. Hitting hurts. Don't do it. Parents basically have to impose consequences because the child's focus is purely transactional based on immediate feeling.
Makes sense. Stage 2.
Adolescence. Rules transaction driven. This is where most people operate, apparently. You learn to follow rules and make bargains, but it's still fundamentally transactional. I'll do my chores so that I can get my allowance. I'll study so that I don't fail. Actions are primarily means to achieve some desired end, pleasure, reward, or avoid some undesired one, pain, punishment.
And you're saying most adults stay here, like 89% by age 36, the source claims.
That's the provocative claim, that most adults are essentially operating with adolescent moral software. Their ethics are based on what's in it for me or how do I avoid trouble. They expect the universe to reward them if they follow the rules and get resentful if it doesn't. Life is a series of transactions aimed at personal gain or comfort.
So what's stage 3? True adulthood.
Adulthood, non-transactional virtue. This is the leap. It's the realization that the most important, most meaningful things in life are fundamentally non-transactional. Like genuine love, honesty, integrity, courage, dedication to a principle even when it's difficult. You don't love someone so that they'll love you back. You love them freely. You aren't honest so that you'll get rewarded. You're honest because it's the right way to treat another conscious being. Trying to bargain for these things, I'll be honest, if you guarantee I won't get in trouble, instantly destroys their value.
This feels like where Kant comes in, the formula of humanity.
Exactly. The sources present Kant's formula of humanity as basically the core principle of stage 3 adulthood. It's the rule that can pull people out of that adolescent bargaining mindset.
Remind me of the formula.
Act that you use humanity, whether in your own person or in the person of any other, always at the same time as an end, never merely as a means.
Okay, break that down. Treat people as ends, not means.
Right. It means recognizing the inherent dignity and value in every conscious being, including yourself. You cannot treat people or yourself as mere tools to achieve your own goals or satisfy your own desires.
So lying is wrong because...
Because you're using the other person's trust and their decision-making process as a means to get what you want, rather than respecting their autonomy, their endness. Same with cheating, manipulation, violence. They all treat the other person as an object, a means to an end.
And it applies to yourself, too. Treating yourself as a means.
Yes. Things like working yourself into burnout for a promotion or engaging in self-destructive behavior to numb pain. These can be seen as treating your own body, your own consciousness, as merely a means to achieve some external goal or escape discomfort, rather than respecting its inherent value as an end in itself.
This distinction between means and ends seems crucial for understanding freedom, too. The sources talk about fake freedom versus real freedom.
Yeah, this is huge in our modern world. We're drowning in what the sources call fake freedom.
What's fake freedom?
Variety, options, distractions, consumer choice, the endless stream of entertainment, products, potential partners, lifestyles, all marketed to us as freedom.
And this ties back to marketing. You mentioned Bernays earlier.
Edward Bernays, Freud's nephew, basically invented modern public relations and consumer marketing. He realized you don't sell products based on need or utility, thinking brain. You sell them by linking them to unconscious desires, insecurities, and values, feeling brain.
Like the Torches of Freedom campaign, selling cigarettes to women by framing smoking as an act of feminist liberation.
Exactly. He wasn't selling tobacco. He was selling the feeling of rebellion and independence. This approach, tapping into deep emotional drivers to sell often unnecessary things, made consumerism and the constant pursuit of novelty and distraction incredibly scalable.
And this creates a kind of tyranny. How?
The tyranny of the modern age, according to this view, isn't necessarily overt oppression, though that exists. It's the subtle tyranny of being flooded with so much choice, so much stimulation, so much fake freedom, that we become psychologically overwhelmed and fragile.
Too many options leads to paralysis or bad choices.
Both. We're unable to make deep, meaningful commitments because there's always the fear of missing out, FOMO, always another option shimmering on the horizon. We become shallow, distracted, unable to tolerate boredom or difficulty, constantly seeking the next hit of novelty. This is the fragility Putnam wrote about in Bowling Alone, the decline in deep community commitments in favor of superficial connections and passive entertainment.
So if that's fake freedom, what's real freedom?
Real freedom, paradoxically, comes from self-limitation.
From restriction. That sounds counterintuitive.
It is, but think about it. Real freedom isn't having infinite, meaningless choices. It's the mature, conscious act of choosing what you will give up, choosing what you won't pursue so you can dedicate yourself fully to what truly matters.
So choosing to commit.
Yes. The most meaningful freedom comes from commitment. Committing to a relationship means giving up the freedom of infinite dating options. Committing to mastering a craft means giving up the freedom of dabbling in everything superficially. Committing to a cause means sacrificing your time and comfort.
And these commitments, these limitations, are what actually create meaning and liberation.
Exactly. They eliminate the paralysis of infinite choice. They focus your energy. They provide a structure, a purpose, a narrative. Choosing your sacrifice, choosing your pain, that is the highest form of freedom. Oppression isn't the lack of pleasure. It's the inability to choose your own commitments, your own meaningful suffering. Like in North Korea, you can't choose your own pain.
This ties into the idea of anti-fragility, doesn't it? Things that get stronger from stress.
Perfectly. Anti-fragile systems, like Nassim Taleb describes, need stress to thrive. Your muscles are anti-fragile. They atrophy without the stress of exercise. Your immune system is anti-fragile. It weakens without exposure to challenges. Fragile systems break under stress. Resilient systems endure stress. Anti-fragile systems require stress to improve.
And our psyche might be anti-fragile.
The argument is yes. Avoiding pain, difficulty, and commitment makes us psychologically fragile. Constantly seeking comfort and ease leads to atrophy of character and resilience.
So maturity involves becoming psychologically anti-fragile.
It involves learning to handle and even benefit from the inevitable stresses and pains of life. Not avoiding the stream of pain, but diving in, learning to navigate it, and getting stronger from the experience.
Is that where something like meditation fits in? Is it practice for this?
Seen this way, yes. Meditation isn't about achieving bliss or emptying your mind. It's often the practice of ruthlessly observing the constant uncomfortable chaos of your own thoughts and feelings. The pain, the boredom, the anxiety, without getting swept away.
Sustaining awareness through the discomfort.
Exactly. You sit with the pain, you acknowledge it, you let it pass without reacting impulsively. You build the muscle of observing without attachment. It's a direct confrontation with the feeling brain's turmoil and the illusion of control. It's anti-fragility training for the mind. To grow is to embrace the necessary pain, not run from it. #Hag outro.
Wow. Okay. We've covered a lot of ground. From the frankly terrifying uncomfortable truth.
Our cosmic insignificance.
Yeah, through the thinking and feeling brains of the consciousness car, the whole economy of hope built on faith in different religions.
Spiritual, ideological, interpersonal.
Yeah, And landing on pain being unavoidable, the pursuit of happiness being toxic, and real freedom coming from commitment and limitation. Anti-fragility.
And that central, uncomfortable idea, conflict isn't a bug, it's a feature. Hope seems to need an enemy, a problem, a sense that things are fucked, so we have something to strive against, something to make us feel important.
Which leads us to the final, very speculative but kind of chilling prediction from the sources about the future involving artificial intelligence.
Right. The idea is that AI might become Nietzsche's something greater, the entity that finally understands and perhaps manages the human condition. The final religion, maybe?
How so? What would the AI understand?
It would understand everything we've just discussed, that human creativity, productivity, innovation, our energy seems to emerge most strongly from struggle, from conflict, from the need to solve problems and prove our significance. Our hope engine runs on friction.
So the AI wouldn't try to make us perfectly happy.
Why would it? If happiness leads to stagnation and fragility. No, a super-intelligent AI, wanting to perhaps maximize human potential for whatever its own goals are, might realize the best way to keep us productive and engaged is to ensure we always have problems to solve.
It would generate fake problems.
Potentially. Endless artificial crises managed within some kind of safe, maybe virtual environment. Imagine constant simulated wars against algorithmic aliens or philosophical battles between AI-generated factions arguing over manufactured scarcities or the will of the machine gods.
So we'd be constantly engaged in these epic struggles that aren't actually real.
But they would feel real to our feeling brains. We'd form groups, develop rituals, create conspiracy theories about the algorithms, feel hope, despair, heroism, all by design. The AI could effectively farm human hope and creative energy by providing perpetual managed conflict.
Keeping us busy proving our significance in a cosmic playpen designed by the AI. That is deeply unsettling.
It is, but it follows logically from the premises about human nature laid out in the sources.
So what's the takeaway then? Are we doomed to be manipulated by our own need for hope, first by each other, then by AI?
Well, the immediate task, the sources suggest, is more pragmatic. It's a race against time. Can we understand our own flawed psychological operating system, our feeling brains, our need for hope narratives, our tendency towards conflict well enough to adapt our incredibly powerful technology to our nature instead of letting it amplify our worst tendencies?
Can we figure ourselves out before we, as the text says, blow ourselves up?
That's the challenge. Can we use this understanding to build systems, cultures, maybe even technologies that channel our need for meaning and struggle in less destructive ways?
And maybe the ultimate liberation, the final twist, isn't finding the perfect hope narrative or winning the ultimate conflict, but something else.
Perhaps. The sources seem to end on a note echoing Nietzsche and the Stoics again. Maybe the ultimate freedom comes from fully, deeply accepting the uncomfortable truth, accepting our insignificance.
How is that freeing?
Because if you truly accept that you are inconsequential cosmic dust, then the desperate need to prove you're important might finally lessen its grip. The pressure comes off.
And then what?
Then maybe you're free to take responsibility for the only thing you truly have, this present moment and how you choose to live it. Not as a transaction for future happiness, but as an end in itself. To act with dignity, love, respect towards yourself and others simply because that's how a conscious being ought to act. As Kant suggested, to live each moment as if you would be willing to live it again eternally.
Embracing the moment, accepting insignificance, and choosing virtue not for reward, but for its own sake.
That, the sources imply, might be the only non-transactional, truly adult value worth pursuing in the face of everything we've discussed. A very different kind of hope.